What are some creepy verified pieces of found footage? Story 1. The Valentich disappearance. The original tapes have been destroyed, but there's a full transcript available and several dramatic reenactments on YouTube. Valentich was flying a plane off the coast of Australia when he began to give a report about something in the sky with him. Valentich: is there any known traffic below 5,000 feet? Robe: no known traffic. V. Seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000. R. What type of aircraft is it? V. I cannot affirm. It is SIG-4 bright. It seems to me like landing lights. The aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. The transcript continues for a few pages of Valentich describing this thing passing around his aircraft. The final part of the transcript is as follows. V. My intentions are to go to King Island. Melbourne. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. Silence for 2 seconds. It is hovering, and it's not an aircraft. Silence for 17 seconds. Open microphone with audible, unidentified staccato noise. End of transcript. Although some theories suggest that the 4 bright landing lights were just the planets, Mars, Mercury, Venus, and Antares, which is a little goofy, as it might be quite difficult to confuse a planet for landing lights. Wrecked pieces of Valentich's aircraft were later found washed up on several beaches around Australia. Story 2. I'm going to go with the man they found alive in a sunken tugboat 3 days after it capsized. As a rescue diver probed the wreckage of an overturned tugboat, it was assumed that all he'd be doing would be recovering the bodies of those who perished. However, as he was swimming through the murky water inside the capsized boat, a hand suddenly reached toward him. It was the ship's cook, Harrison O'Keefe, who had somehow survived for approximately 60 hours in only his underwear in the freezing cold water by breathing from a small air pocket and taking sips of Coca-Cola. O'Keefe was the only one of 12 crew members who survived when the Jacon 4 tugboat capsized. Story 3. The sinking of a ferry filled with Korean students that were told to put on their life preservers and stay seated in a ship the captain knew was sinking. The part that makes it all seem real is when a kid jokingly sings a song from the Titanic, thinking it'll all be fine. Answer. From the Wikipedia page. On 18th April, the rescued vice principal of Danwon High School, Kang Min-kyu, 52, committed tragic end by hanging himself. Police stated that a note was found in his wallet. He had organized the field trip that had brought the high school party aboard the ship, and Kang had written in his 2-page note that surviving alone is too painful when 200 lives are unaccounted for. I take full responsibility. This is the part that really gets me. The note ended with a request that his body be cremated and the ashes scattered over the site of the accident. That I might be a teacher in heaven to those kids whose bodies have not been found. Story 4. Definitely. This dash cam footage from a strange roadblock in the middle of the highway in the middle of the night. I believe the guy that took the footage is a Redditor. Answer. Yep. This has happened to me. Me and a friend years back came back from a golf driving range late at night, overtaken by a car going about 80-90 miles on a dark road with a lot of bushes to the side. 5 minutes later, we saw the same car in middle of the road with all doors open. I knew something was up when we saw no people, the car was not damaged, no debris, and the lights in the car were still on with all doors flung wide open. Told my friend driving to just floor it and we didn't look back. Edit. Golf not gold. Story 5. The original Night Stalker was a serial killer active in the 70s and 80s who would sometimes call his victims before and after attacks, leaving threats. One of them managed to record this. The weepy-voiced killer would call 911 after his takedown, sounding like he was weeping, telling them where to find the bodies and begging them catch him so he could stop. David Parker Ray, a.k.a. the Toy Box Killer, has one of the more disturbing stories out there, not only in terms of what he did, but how he was captured. His victims would wake up locked in a box and would hear this recording. This is a reenactment based on the transcript, which would be the first of a long series of very horrific events. All of these have been audio, but the final one I'll share is the taped confession of Canadian serial murderer and rapist Russell Williams. This is pretty long, but over 2 hours and 39 minutes, you watch a real police interview unfold and see him get caught in his lies and finally forced to confess to his crime. The actual interview took over 10 hours, so this has been edited down to all of the relevant material. Answer: I spent a few hours reading about David Parker Ray and listened to that recording. How fudge up would that be? Another really difficult audio recording is the violation of Shirley Lynette Ledford. She was 16 at the time. 2 disgusting pieces of shoot. Lawrence Bitney and Roy Norris, known as the Toolbox Killers, violation and beat her over the span of a few hours and then dumped her body on someone's lawn. At a few points, one of them starts using pliers on her. It is truly harsh. The 2 were found guilty of the different crime they're charged with, and one got life, the other got passing, but both are still alive. The 5 takedown they are charged with took place over a 4-month period. Story 6. A call from the weepy-voiced killer fits the bill, although it's audio only. Basically, if you don't know, this guy would eliminate almost involuntarily and then usually call the police expressing remorse for what he had done while crying. He eventually got caught because his final victim injured him in self-defense. Knowing the killer was injured, the police were on the lookout for anyone checking into hospitals with injuries like his. Here's a collection of his 911 calls. Story 7. Recently, there was a guy in Chicago who was breaking into houses. He was caught on security cameras, slowly creeping down some stairs and just watching the homeowners sleeping on the couch. Not as violent as some of these other posts, but super creepy. Answer: When I was about 14, 15, I had a similar experience. It was just my mom and I, and we were living in a normal, safe area, but the house we were renting was apparently previously occupied by a young mom with schizophrenia and her teenage son who were forcibly evicted. We never heard anything about her and her son other than that from our neighbors. But one day when I was home from school, someone tried to enter our garage. I freaked out, yelled, "Who's there?" And they ran off. I saw 2 teenage boys run off, and later it was assumed by neighbors that it was the old tenant's son and his friend. They showed me a picture of him, and it was the guy I saw in my garage. So then they go on to tell me that apparently the son was also a little disturbed, and with his mom usually out of action, he would sneak into people's houses and just watch their TV and eat their food and then leave. Oh, and the best part. He's the nephew of Australian serial killer Ivan Milat. For whatever fudge reason, most of the neighbors were okay with this because he needed help and was in a bad situation and whatever, but that shoot didn't fly with my mom. We changed all the locks and that was it. We didn't see or hear from him again. A few weeks later, I had a bad dream and woke up thinking that I had seen someone outside my bedroom window, watching me sleep. I freaked out, ran to my mom's bedroom, and slept in her bed that night. I really felt like I had actually seen someone, but just put it down to being sleepy and probably imagining it. A few days later, it happened again, only this time I was definitely awake, and I definitely saw someone. I screamed bloody takedown and Mom called the cops. By the time they got there, he was long gone. They dusted for prints, left gross black dust all over our back door and fence, and we never heard from them again. I was totally freaked out and sleeping in my mom's bed every night at this stage. Then a week or so later, I wake up because our dog, who was a golden retriever and never growled or barked at anything, was on the end of the bed growling like a fudge Rottweiler or something. I sat up, and there was someone at the foot of our fudge bed. I screamed and woke Mum, and our dog ran off and chased him out. Called the cops, same shoot. Nothing happened. We moved out a week later. A few years ago, turned out the kid and his friend take down another kid with an axe in the woods. Creepiest fudge thing that's ever happened to me, and sometimes I wonder if I was lucky enough to not be the one getting chopped up in the woods with an axe. Story 8. Stephen McDaniel peeping Tom video before he breaks into Lauren Giddings' apartment and eliminate her. Edit. Bonus. McDaniel being interviewed several days later by local news as a concerned friend. Story 9. I saw a road rage video on Reddit that was absolutely terrifying. This methed-out lady was trying to run some girls off the road and was impersonating a police officer so they would open the car door. Answer. If you're going for road rage, I think the incident that's been ingrained into my mind is the dude that pulled out a crossbow. The passenger that was with the guy that was shot remembered him saying something like, "Did he just fudge shoot me with a crossbow?" and then dying because it hit his aorta. Edit. Murderer was a deacon, and it happened on the I-95 back in '95, I believe. Story 10. Yuri Lipsky, a diver that got disoriented in an underwater tunnel in the Red Sea and went down and down until he died. Story 11. I did a report on the Jonestown Massacre once in 10th grade, and while researching, I happened to listen to this. During the autopsy, they found a tape recorder on someone, and this tape was in it. Edit. I forgot to mention I go to a Catholic school. Story 12. The video diaries of Bjork stalker Ricardo Elpes. His descent into madness is fascinating to me. There's an hour-and-a-half video on YouTube that shows him progressively getting worse. It doesn't end well. Answer. I'll give the TLDR for Reddit. Ricardo Lopez was a guy with severe mental health problems who developed an obsession with Bjork, an Icelandic singer. When I say obsessed, I mean he bought a video camera. This all happened in 1996, documenting all of it, and I only recommend watching his tapes if you want to gaze into the abyss. It ends with him committing tragic end, and his body was found a few days later by police after his apartment management got complaints about a smell coming from his apartment. Oh, and he mailed an acid bomb to Bjork. The tapes document him building it, and it would have worked. That was only intercepted after police found his tapes while investigating his apartment. The entire footage can be found online. It only got discovered in its entirety recently, and again, only watch it if you want to gaze into some pretty morbid shoot, and it ends with Lopez shooting himself in the head. Story 13. Officer Kent McGowan kicked in the door on a felony warrant and shot 41-year-old Susan White, claiming she'd pulled a gun on him. At first, everything seems kosher, but later on that night, the officers investigating the shooting found that she was on the phone with 911 at the time, and isn't the aggressor, she's scared out of her mind. It appears that McGowan had been stalking her and had basically fabricated the circumstances that led to her having a warrant out against her. He then broke into her house, ran up to her bedroom, and shot her. She's frantic, telling the operator that he's trying to break into her house. One of the last things she says is, "Help!" It's chilling. Edit. 911 footage starts at about the 7-minute mark. Story 14. The recording of the 911 call where the guy is calling 911 and then you hear his terrified, blood-curdling scream as the tower collapses, and then silence as the line goes dead. Fudge me up for a while. Answer. I was a 911 operator for a few years. I had a training with someone who was a 911 operator during 911. He said how many of his co-workers, himself included, had to retire or leave afterwards because of the extreme PTSD. He shook a lot and just looked like he never slept. He was talking about the stresses of the job and how it's important to take care of yourself so you don't burn out. I wanted to hug him so bad after his speech. Story 15. The Leonard Lake footage. Now, I am not 100% sure this is verified to actually be the video they found at Lake's home, but it is incredibly unsettling. Lake was a serial murderer who had a torture chamber in his home. The video basically consists of him interviewing a woman about the terms of her imprisonment and talking about his desires with his partner in crime. The story is creepy as. Give him a Google. Story 16. In 1984, a Cessna L-19 bird dog crashed in the Tabernash Co. The wreckage wasn't found until 3 years later by a couple backpackers. The local law enforcement found this heavily damaged VHS tape and were able to figure out what happened. From Wikipedia, on August 10, 1984, a Cessna L-19 bird dog, registration number N4584A, piloted by James Jeb Cadell, 38, crashed in a forest near Tabernash. The aircraft was en route from Granby, Colorado to Jeffco, Colorado. The wreck was found by a pair of backpackers 3 years later on August 23, 1987. A 6-minute video shot from a VHS camcorder mounted on the instrument panel was found at the site. The heavily damaged tape, some of it hanging from tree branches, was recovered and repaired by Colorado Deputy Sheriff Dale Wood. Subsequent analysis of the footage revealed that the pilot had not taken into account the density altitude conditions that existed on the day of the flight. The aircraft was unable to climb away from steadily rising terrain due to the fact that it was essentially at or above its service ceiling, and in an attempt to remedy the situation, the pilot stalled the airplane 3 times during a steep bank to the right. The pilot could be heard yelling, "Darn, hang on, Ronnie," to his one backseat passenger, Ronald Hugh Wilmond, 36, 3 seconds before impacting the terrain. It's the "darn, hang on, Ronnie" that gets me. Answer. First time I saw this, I was frozen. This is how my dad died. After takeoff, he was seen to disappear beyond the trees at the end of the runway. Nobody was concerned until about an hour later when someone noticed that his plane, high-wing ultralight, wasn't to be seen anywhere and it was getting on dark. They found him in the wreckage within a kilometer of the end of the runway a couple of hours later. Possible wind shear was the end result. Finding it near impossible to get any information on it owing to the year, 1992, and going through the hoops, trying to get info from the ATSB News. Sources, police, etc. has been also near impossible. Story 17. The nightclub fire. Fudge that. I've seen some shoot, but that one stuck with me for a while. On mobile, we'll find and link later. Eat it. Credit to you, Jake Dog Finn Human, for finding, but here you go. Watch at your own risk. Answer. They made us analyze this video as a blow-by-blow from inception to full involvement as part of my Firefighter 1 class. You can see how the fire catches the curtains and travels upwards and spreads so rapidly across the synthetic materials. You can even catch some of the warning signs of flashover toward the end of the video. The instructor told us all the ways it could have been prevented. One lousy sprinkler head would have been enough to stop it from going anywhere. Even a fire extinguisher. It took people so long to realize that something was wrong while the curtains were burning. If the nightclub hadn't locked the back door to prevent people from sneaking in, More people could have gotten out if the place hadn't been so overfilled past the legal limit and so on. I've seen mangled bodies in bad car accidents. I've seen buildings burn completely to the ground right in front of me. I've been inside a room as it was starting to roll over. I've been genuinely afraid for my life on more than one occasion. Hearing the screams in this video as a probie are still some of the most haunting memories I have. That link stays blue. As an aside, to give you all an idea of just how fast fire spreads, here is a great video comparing a room fully furnished with modern couches, tables, construction, etc., with a room equipped with everything you might find in a house about 40 years ago. We rely heavily on cheap synthetic products these days, which burn fast, hot, and dirty as compared to organic materials. A modern fire will double in size every 90 seconds. It takes just under 3.5 minutes for the modern room to completely flash over. Take this as a reminder to buy home fire extinguishers, check your smoke alarm batteries, and GTFO ASAP if the fire makes it much past the incipient stage, because the house is probably already gone and you're better off not going with it. Story 18. There's a documentary on YouTube that details the takedown of a farm family in Texas. The survivor was Robin, the 10-year-old daughter. She was watching from her bedroom door. She ran back into bed, and they shot at her as she laid in bed and missed. The most disturbing part is probably how she'd hang her robe up on a hook on her door every night. And after she got shot, she lay on the bed, pretending to be dead for hours, because she thought the robe was the man who did it watching her. And the most heartbreaking part is when all the police arrived, and she just cried about needing to feed her animals. One of the saddest stories I've ever heard. The 911 call. Story 19. Anyone got that footage of a bomb going off in a classroom and eviscerating a woman that was in the room? Then there's the guy who got arrested. I never found out what for, and wasn't searched when he was brought in. He was given a bottle of water, and then the cop who was about to have a sit-down with him walked out of the room. He took a sip from the bottle, pulled out a gun, and with one hand flicked off the safety and put a bullet in the side of his head without hesitation. He's right in the middle of the frame the whole time, and you see blood flowing out the entrance wound. Hear a groan from the moment he pulls the trigger that gets weaker over the following seconds, and his body goes from tense to limp. You literally see the life leave his body. It kinda makes you realize that shoot isn't instant passing. Story 20. That chimp owner's 911 call while her escaped ape was eating her friend, Sharla Nash. Coupled with her recovery photos, this was pretty disturbing. Not as bad as some of the others on this thread, but a fair contribution, I think. Story 21. I came in looking for ghosts and UFOs. Realized the known is far more scary than the unknown. Do something nice for someone else today. Story 22. As I'm finishing reading this thread in my hotel late at night, someone just walked in my room accidentally. I may not have actually ever been that freaked out. Edit. Still alive. Answer. When my wife and I got our first apartment together on the second floor of someone's house, we were watching a movie together. Some goofy movie I can't remember the name of, where Ava Longoria was a ghost, and I think Pale Rudd was in it. Halfway through it, and my wife starts shrieking and points to our living room entrance, and Scene and I poking around the corner watching us. They bolt. I get up and follow. I remember them yelling sorry, and they thought someone else still lived there. I got outside, and they were fudge gone like a fart in the wind. It was creepy. Locked my door after that. Story 23. Not found footage exactly, but the one where a family, a driving and a brick from the truck in front of them, goes through the windshield to eliminate the mother. Their panicked shrieks are fudge heart-wrenchingly terrifying. I'm not going to link to it because I don't want to accidentally see it again. Story 24. The Swedish twins that ran into traffic and its aftermath is a story that really bothers me for some reason. Not sure if it's been posted yet, but well worth a watch, and then read the wiki after to find out what happened next. Story 25. Melissa Doy's call from the 83rd floor of the WTC. Just heartbreaking to listen to, especially knowing how it will all end. Story 26. Surprised no one mentioned unknown Russian soldier yet. It's a video from the Kazaa era of a guy getting his throat slit. Cured me of all these kinds of videos. The sound the guy makes and the way the knife pretty much saws through his throat is forever ingrained in my mind. Story 27. This is very scary, but also very sad. There are longer versions of this out there, but this is a short clip. It's video footage of Willowbrook State School on Staten Island, where deformed and mentally ill children and adults were held in appalling conditions. This is where Geraldo Rivera got his start, I believe. Story 28. I don't remember her name, but the lady in a hotel was wigging out in the elevator like someone was there, she was alone, and then later her body was found in the water tank. Story 29. Guys, I came into this thread looking for creepy, not horrifying and gruesome. You know, Area 51 type stuff, haunted mansion stuff, weird phenomena, borderline inexplicable coincidences, relatively innocuous things like that. Not traumatic gore. Story 30. The photos from the cell phones of the Dutch girls who went missing in South America scare the shoot out of me. Story 31. Surprised nobody has mentioned David Parker Ray, aka the Toy Box Killer. He kept extensive video footage of his violation takedown spree. I saw about 30 seconds of it in a documentary, and I'm unsure if the police released any more, but I think that he wins this thread. Story 32. There was a clip of an elderly woman calling 911 about a suspicious-looking man outside. You hear the door creak open, then she screams bloody takedown and the call ends. There was no resolution. It's on YouTube somewhere. Story 33. I've been upstairs reading this for hours. Just went down to pee and my husband jumped out to scare me. Divorce imminent. Story 34. It's 1:45 a.m. and there's a noise outside. This is it, Reddit. I'm a goner. Feed my dog. Edit. This is dog. Sigurd is dead. Send food. Story 35. Haven't seen him mentioned yet, but Anatoly Slivko is definitely creepy, in not only a vintage found footage vibe kind of way. Short version, serial killer active in Russia between the 60s-80s who take down 7 boys while doing experiments. His victims were young boys in his youth club. He didn't eliminate everyone he did experiments on, but he did have a fondness for hanging the boys until unconscious, having his way with them and reviving some of them to go on to lead their lives, not knowing what had happened to them while out. The ones he did eliminate, he dismembered and burned. The Wikipedia article is a great read, but there is also graphic footage.